We've been talking all this time about this kind of shroud of unknowing that the left lives in because of their dominance of the media, and how that shroud is being perforated by reality because of the internet, the change in the internet, and how they're in this panicked way. They're trying to have the counter-reformation where they basically bring in Torquemada and torture all of us who disagree with them, and they torture us by throwing us off Twitter. And the wonderful sense of that they have, that they are entitled to do this, that the opinions that disagree with them are completely out of court, that if you say, like, no, there should be literally no abortion, there's something terribly, terribly wrong with you. It's not like, I said I was talking to Megyn Kelly yesterday, and we were talking about both of us sort of having a lot of gay people in our lives and people that we love in our lives who are gay. And I said, but that doesn't mean I think that people who feel that this is a sin shouldn't be able to speak. I think, of course, they should be able to speak. I don't want to hear their ugly language. I don't want to hear them spitting, nasty things at me. But, gay people perform actions, and you have a right to pass a judgment on whether those actions are correct or not. And you have a right to comment on the role of sexuality in our lives and in our society. One of the things I love about the left, I just love it because corruption always makes me laugh. I love when they kill people. Abortion. They lie. They say trans women are women, and then they attack central institutions of the world, like marriage. And then you say, well, maybe this isn't a good idea. And they say, why is it so important to you? What, are you obsessed with sex? The answer to that is like a pie in the face kind of like. But anyway, there was an article in the New York Times on Knucklehead Row, the op-ed section of the New York Times, a former newspaper. And by the way, if you put A Strange Habit of Mine on the New York Times bestseller list, for 4 weeks, I will stop saying a former newspaper. I'll just say the New York Times and then be silent for a moment while you think to yourself a former newspaper, just to thank them for putting me on the New York Times list. However, there's an article by Tressie McMillan Cottom, C-O-T-T-O-M, in the political talk show race. Outrage is winning, and she is an associate professor at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill School of Information and Library Science, the author of Thick and Other Essays, and a 2020 MacArthur Fellow. Now, the MacArthur Fellowship is essentially welfare for leftists. So, like that, they call it a genius grant. That's the way leftists think of themselves. So we know who she is. So she's talking about the retirement of Trevor Noah, and she's talking about the fact that liberals appear to dominate the late night TV show. And I just want to read this because it is a masterpiece. It is a masterpiece of non-self-awareness. I don't think there is a word for the opposite of self-awareness, for what it means to be not self-aware. But whatever it is, this is a masterpiece of that genre. She says, liberals appear to dominate the late night TV show genre. The reason for that dominance is complex. It's complex. What is the reason? Wouldn't be that they blacklist anybody who doesn't say what they want them to say. No, it couldn't be that. It's complex. Audiences have different orientations toward humor and political talk. Those orientations have some underlying psychological needs, and styles of comedy have political and cultural histories. Bluntly, she says, scholars who study political communication and humor often find that liberals are ironic smart alecks and conservatives are outraged moralists. Some of us are a bit of both, but most of us have a psychological need to be one over the other. So they're ironic, they're smart alecks, they're cool, they're hip, they're great, they're wonderful. We're outraged, nasty moralists, right? A lot of research on psychology, and by the way, psychology is wholly dominated by the left, psychology, history, and media, to explain why we find funny what we do. The need for closure is a big one. If you have a high need for clear-cut moral rules, then satire, which asks us to skewer our own beliefs, is going to make you pretty anxious. Ouchy stuff, if us versus them makes you feel safest. In other words, leftists are willing to skewer their own beliefs. We see this all the time. Stephen Colbert, every time we see Stephen Colbert, he's going after those leftists and Nancy Pelosi. I mean, he's always, you never hear him attacking the right. You never hear him say a word about Trump, but he's always attacking those. I mean, this is how purblind, a wonderful old word, this is how purblind they are. They do not see. They think that they are open-minded and they're skewering their own beliefs. When in fact, as we talked about earlier on the show, the minute the New York Times says something about the fact that Joe Biden is clearly deteriorating, it's like, no, don't say that, don't say it. Do not tell us the truth. Liberals may be drawn to ironic humor like satire because it reflects their antagonism toward the status quo. But outrage plays better to the political psychology of conservatives. As outrage has become a more viable media model than satire, it has gotten harder to sell liberal politics. It's a wonderful piece. I love this piece. All of our political, cultural, and economic messages risk being filtered through an identity-driven ecosystem that proportionally rewards not just conservatism and republicanism, this is a quote, but also conservative populism on the far right. The irony isn't lost on me. The conservative audiences complain about how vilified they are in popular culture. Conservative media seems to be doing quite well. Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro are two of the most popular podcast hosts in the nation. I just want to pause here for a minute. You know, a lot of people argue about whether Matt Walsh or I am funnier. The right answer is I am. That's just the correct answer. I don't want to be, it's a spoiler alert, but still. But, you know, Shapiro is a pretty funny guy. It always makes me laugh anyway. I think he's a pretty witty guy. I don't listen to Joe Rogan that much, but you know, Shapiro doesn't strike me as being outraged all that much at all, really. He's just, he's fact-based. He and I have very different value sets, but every time he talks about the facts, I usually think, yes, that's pretty much what's going on. But she says there's no liberal counterpart to Shapiro or Rogan. Fox News lost some of its big names when Megyn Kelly and Bill O'Reilly left, but while MSNBC looks for its footing after Rachel Maddow's exit on most weeknights and a CNN pivots to centrism, Fox is beating them both in the ratings. When you look across media platforms, it's easier to see how conservative psychological preference for outrage bodes better for their growth in satellite radio, lifestyle media, and of course, social media. The interesting thing about this is there are outrage mongers on the right, and I think all the left are outrage mongers. I think Stephen Colbert is pure outrage. I think that's all he is. I mean, he's funny because he's got 100 writers, but still, I think he is an outrage monger. That's what he is. All these people punch Trump in the face, shoot Trump. When was the last time an actor shot Trump? What the hell? Why is that not outrage? Why is it not outrage? It is just an amazing, amazing thing to me. The level of lack of self-knowledge, and as I say, there should be a word for that, but there's not. The level of lack of self-knowledge. They think seriously that they are cool, hip, ironic people against the status quo. They are the status quo. The reason Shapiro and Rogan are dominating podcasts is because podcasts are a new, untested territory. Believe me, if the left could shut us down, they would. They took the Babylon Bee off Twitter. The Babylon Bee, which is pure comedy, pure mockery, they've taken them off Twitter. They suppressed me, I'm sure of it, because all of a sudden my views are going up, and all of a sudden people who haven't heard from me in months are hearing from me. You know, and who could be more benevolent than me? Who could be less outraged and sweeter? I mean, really, butter would not melt in my mouth. I'm so sweet. I do not understand why anybody would come after me, but they come after Jordan Peterson. Now, Jordan Peterson can bring some outrage, but the outrage is really about people mistreating themselves. You know, when Jordan gets outraged, it's not because sometimes he gets outraged at the things that they want him to do, like they want to force him to use pronouns and things like this. But most of his outrage is against people hurting themselves. Still, the left is all outrage. Who burned Kenosha? You know, who set Kenosha on fire? Who turned Seattle into a trash pit? Who turned San Francisco into a trash pit? You know, it's just amazing. You know, here's the thing. I won't say I do this every day, but often I ask myself, am I wrong about everything? You know, is everything wrong? I constantly question my politics, my faith, my beliefs, and my beliefs about the left, because I know that it's very easy to fall into, demonizing leftists. I think leftism is a bad philosophy, just like I think radical Islam is a bad religion, right? I think that not treating women as equal people in the world, I think that's a bad philosophy. I think communism, bad philosophy. Nazism, bad philosophy. But I understand that there are many, many Democrats who aren't leftists, but who don't understand how far the left has taken over their party. So I try very hard not to demonize the voters on the left, even if I talk about the philosophy of the left and the people who instantiate or embody that philosophy. These people, like this lady, who write for the New York Times, who read the New York Times and nothing else, They simply do not know what is going on. I can't even think of anybody on the right like this, anybody operating on the right at a high level who is like this. But this woman has a MacArthur Fellow, and she has no idea of the comedy. How could she see the Babylon Bee? It's been canceled. How could she see it? She has no idea of the fact that we're laughing over here, we're having a good time. Everybody who comes to the Daily Wire says, how come you guys are having such a good time? It's because we're not outraged. We know we're fighting for the right, and we know in the long run, at the end of the story, we're going to win. Man, that was great. And if you want more great content, like and subscribe to the Andrew Klavan Podcast.